Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Administrator Power. Good to see you. I want to stick with the discussion about Gaza. Mr. Chair, I'd like to enter into a record an article from The Hill that was from Sunday titled, Cindy McCain says Gaza on the edge of going over the cliff with famine and not being able to recover. Cindy is the widow of our former Senate Foreign Relations colleague, John McCain, a dear friend. I know, Administrator Power, you work closely.
Without objection, it'll be included in the record.
Thank you. I know you work closely with the World Food Program, and you know Cindy McCain. Do you share that concern that she expressed just 3 days ago that Gazans are on the verge of very serious risk of famine?
Yes, I mean, I think the report that was done, which drew on really the gold standard of how we measure these things, is very clear on this matter. And WHO is already reporting deaths related to conditions stemming from malnutrition. And to just put this in some context, because it's clear that the humanitarian circumstances weren't great in Gaza before October 7th. But before October 7th, there was almost no child malnutrition whatsoever. And now close to 1 in 3 in northern Gaza. And if you look at, the severe acute malnutrition where you measure with the circumference, access is very difficult for organizations that measure these things. But just from January to February, not taking account of the last 6 weeks, severe acute malnutrition doubled among under 5 kids. So we are, and Cindy, of course, our USAID's great collaborator, and her teams were very eager to get food in there, but also very specifically to address the under 5 needs, which require ready-to-use therapeutic food, so very specific, kind of assistance. And we're hopeful that some of the changes that have been made and are being contemplated but need to be made urgently by Israel will allow us to flow in resources to nip what is a famine fundamentally in the bud.
I asked Secretary Austin yesterday at an Armed Services Committee hearing whether growing famine or medical catastrophe in Gaza would escalate violence in the region, and he said absolutely it would. The activities of Hezbollah in the north, the activities of the Houthis in the Red Sea, the activities of Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria, possibly activities of Iran itself, will only escalate at a time when we need to be looking for de-escalation, a hostage deal, a ceasefire, de-escalation in the region. So we have a compelling interest, we, the United States, the world, Israel, Gaza, Palestine, to avert this widening humanitarian catastrophe. Israel, of course, must defend itself against any who would annihilate it, including Hamas, Hamas who carried out the attack, who celebrated it, who says they'll do it again. But this should not be a war against Gazans or Palestinians. It should be a war against Hamas. And one of the main bits of evidence about what is it is the access to humanitarian supplies, especially food and medicine. We were getting about 500 trucks a day of supplies into Gaza before October 7. It was in the single digits or dozens for months and months and months. It took too long to open the Kerem-Shalom border crossing. I do applaud President Biden in his conversations last week with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Subsequently, Kerem-Shalom has been opened wider in terms of more supplies in. There's been a commitment to open the Erez border crossing. And we see the pace picking up. Israel has restored water service into the north of Gaza. Israel has allowed bakeries to open again to provide, make bread and food for Gazans. The pace of the trucks per day exceeded 300 for the first time on Sunday and got near 500 on Monday. But it has taken way too long to get supplies to suffering Gazans. Gazans are suffering under Hamas. They're not all Hamas. And so I would just like to ask you, I know as USAID, you work with these NGOs, many of which were troubled, frightened, scared, backed off of their activities after the attack on the World Central Kitchen convoy. Talk to me about what USAID can do in your remit to provide more confidence that humanitarian aid can be delivered at scale.
The poster board.
That's the next person.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just.
You gotta get
just,
through Senator
He makes
Kaine
an
first.
entrance. Look, what I would say is that I traveled to the region last month, and the nature of my engagement kind of mirrors the way you've played back some of the progress that's been made lately, which is, saying to the IDF and to the Prime Minister and to the government, these things are going to be done. The situation is going to get so bad that these additional steps are going to be taken. Just take them, take them now. Hard as it is, and understanding the domestic politics and public opinion after what Hamas did, and unfortunately, a lot of time has been lost. And the commitments are really welcome, but the commitments need to be executed, including an additional crossing into the north, not just the agreement to do it, but the actual crossing. And you're right that the number of trucks is up, and that's incredibly important. But I think we also need to give some context here, which is you're also right that 500 trucks were entering before October 7th, but that was commercial, that was humanitarian. It wasn't as if every family was in need of humanitarian assistance. Now, every family, pretty much, I think, is in need of humanitarian assistance. And if you think of the destruction of anything that one had in their home, markets, granaries, arable land, the bulldozing of arable land, and what you described, which is how few trucks were getting in over such a long period of time, we just have so much catch-up to do. Apart from the fact that whole towns where people lived, no longer exist in the way that they did, where more than half of the buildings have been destroyed or damaged or uninhabitable in some fashion. So this is just unlike any of the environments that I've worked in the past or our partners have worked in, where there's some kind of reliable place where people can either start to rebuild their lives or imagine that the war ends and they can return to the lives they had and begin to grow their land again. I mean, all of that is going to take so long. So it just underscores, again, the importance of passing the National Security Supplemental Request so we have the resources to help, but understanding that the access issues and the protection issues where humanitarians can actually do their work safely, that those are commitments that have been made are followed through on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yesterday.
I appreciate that.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
Senator